In this episode, toast. Tiny, tiny toast. So I was thinking about beloved 3D file sharing site that I've been on for years and I've bored my friends to death talking about. Uh, but it's been maybe a little hard to use lately. And I found myself wondering what they actually run their servers on. And it might be a little uncharitable, but Toast came to mind. So the upshot, though, is that got me thinking about toast and toasters, and I thought, hey, that'd be kind of a fun thing to make, right? So what we've done is we've made 1/18 scale toaster. So we've got, try to get this to focus. There we go. Maybe you can see it a little better. And what's really cool is it actually includes a toast ejecting mechanism, because here at Zen's Toys we make toys, not figurines, not sculptures. We make toys, and to me that means the difference is that something that sits on a shelf and is there to be looked at, that's totally cool. But if it's a toy, it needs to be meant to be played with, and ideally it needs to do something. So our toaster actually toasts bread for all your 1/18 scale breakfast or snack needs. So I made it in FreeCAD, like most things we do here. It's an open source tool. I love it. It's great. It's a little bit buggy, but being able to actually control my files is really important to me. And knowing that it's not going to evaporate in a year or a decade is also really important. So I really like it. The toaster is made up of 3 parts. They all print pretty easily. It's tuned for 0.4 nozzle. I originally thought I'd have a sort of spring mechanism for the bottom that would press the toast up, but that didn't actually work that well, just because this is so small scale. So you can print springs with PLA, and it can work really well. I've seen like clock wind-up cars and G. Zumwalt, I think. I might be getting that name slightly wrong, but he does a lot of really amazing things with wind-up PLA mechanisms. But at this scale, it didn't really work like a spring. What it was working like is more of a fulcrum. So it's the floor that the toast sits on really works more like a lever. So I redesigned that part 2 times. First I had there's an upright in the middle, and that didn't work quite. That actually worked less well. So I moved it to an edge, and then that worked pretty well. And I'm pretty happy with how it came out. So let's talk about how to assemble the toaster. So here's the 3 parts that make up the toaster. We've got a housing that you'll want to print like that with the open spot facing up. We have, I've been calling it the floor, but this is what the toast rests on. And it's kind of like a little seesaw that when you press down here will flip up and push the toast out. It's pretty easy. You just want to print it flat. And then we have the base, which provides that fulcrum that I was talking about a little bit ago. And you want to print this on its side. So, yeah. So first thing you want to do, and I've already done it here, but take your toaster, housing, and make sure you clean up the slots for the toast a little bit. So elephant's foot is a really common thing with 3D printing, where you get a little bit of spread out on the bottom layer or two. And if you get that in these slots, that could very easily grip the toast and make it a little hard for the toast to come out, and it just won't be as fun. So make sure you clean that up a little bit if you need to. Similarly, we have a slot here for the ejection mechanism that you want to double check and make sure that's nice and clean too. So I've already kind of given this the once over, and I'm happy with it. So next thing to do is to put the floor in. So what we need is this tab here to come through this slot, but it's too wide, right? Which is important to keep it stable later. So what I have to do is take the floor and turn it 90 degrees, and then I can kind of just weave it through the hole. And once I've done that, this is slightly fiddly, but not too bad. I just need to turn it 90 degrees. So once it's all the way through, you can turn it, and then there we go. So now we have the ejection mechanism working. It should feel pretty loose in there. It should want to stay flat, but move up and down. So yeah. And then the last step is just to put the base on. Now, you'll notice that the base is asymmetric, right? Like we talked about when I was showing you the CAD files. So make sure that this fulcrum is close. It's closer to the side with the ejection mechanism. So what you want is, here's our ejection mechanism tab. What you don't want is this. That's what you don't want. What you do want is this. So put that in. It may actually just fit. It's a pretty good, depending on the tolerances of your machine, it might just stay. But if you want, you can certainly add a little bit of super glue here to kind of seal it in. And there's the toaster. So toast is great, but toast alone is kind of a little boring and a little sad, right? So to round this out, I made a few other things. I made some jars. So I've got some grape jam, some strawberry, some orange marmalade, and some peanut butter. And I know it doesn't look, you can't make it out that well from that angle, but if I pull one of these up close, you should be able to see that there's a little bit of color in there. So in a minute, I'll show you how I did that. And of course, there's also some avocado house. So let's talk about the jars. So I've got a whole bunch here. The orange marmalade and grape jelly and some peanut butter, and there's a strawberry jam. So what's going on here is I've got two parts. The jar itself, which I printed in translucent plastic, and you can see is hollow. So it's a nice little cavity. And the jar lids. And the jar lids, which I printed in sort of a silvery gray. And you'll see that there's a little bit of a raised bit. So that fits into the cavity to make a closed jar. It fits pretty loosely, so you'll definitely need super glue. So I could just glue this together and have an empty jar, or I could certainly have it open on a table or something. But let's actually make this into some strawberry jelly. So what I've been doing is I want a little bit of color in here, but I still want to be able to glue up the jar and attach the lid. So what works out really well is just some filament. So what I'm going to do is take some filament and put it in the jar like that. So you'll see that the plastic isn't really clear, but it's clear enough that we get a hint of color, which is perfect. So what I want to do is I'm going to clip off a tiny bit of filament, but if I clip it flush with the jar, that's not quite what I want, because then the raised bit of the jar lid, this part, won't have anywhere to go, right? So what I need to do is I need to clip off enough filament so that it gives us a little bit of color, but not so much that it doesn't, or that it fails to leave a little bit of a gap for the lid. So I'm going to get my trusty clippers, and I'm going to clip off just a tiny bit of filament. So here I have a tiny little bit of filament. I'm going to get my jar, my empty jar, and put it in like so. And see, that was too much. It's flush. So I'm going to just try again. I'm going to take an even smaller bit of filament. Okay. And now I'll put that in. Okay, that looks better. I've got a little bit of it doesn't go all the way to the top of the jar, which is perfect. And now what I'm going to do is get my super glue and just put a generous amount into the top here. I kind of just want to glue everything together, right? Hopefully not my fingers, but I want to keep the filament inside the jar, and I want to make sure there's enough super glue there to grab the jar lid. So there we go. I'm gonna just and there's our completed jar with some vaguely red stuff in it to suggest some strawberry jam. So I'm just going to hold this together a little bit while it sets up, but that's pretty much it.
So to use the toaster, what you want to do is get a couple of pieces of 3D printed toast. And insert them into the slots. You want to kind of tap them down a little bit, make sure they're nice and seated well. And then to eject it, you want to hold the toaster with one hand and then just tap on the ejection tab with a finger.
That's about it for this video. Thanks for watching, and if you like this kind of stuff, if you want to see 3D printed toys and 1/18th scale fun, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks a lot. See you next video.